England survived the Romans, the Vikings, and the Normans. But in November 1688, over 450 warships carrying 40,000 Dutch soldiers crossed the North Sea toward its shores, an armada larger than the Spanish fleet sent a century before. Almost no one remembers the day the Dutch invaded England, or why an entire kingdom collapsed before them without a fight. Louis XIV's shadow stretched across Europe, unsettling every Protestant court from Stockholm to The Hague. In 1685, his revocation of the Edict of Nantes sent a wave of Huguenot refugees fleeing French borders, their stories of confiscated property and broken churches fueling panic in the Dutch Republic and England alike. French armies pressed into the Rhineland, and the League of Augsburg, an uneasy coalition of German, Dutch and Spanish powers, braced for war. The Dutch, surrounded by water and commerce, watched as French privateers prowled their trade routes, threatening to choke the lifeblood of their economy. Memories of the Treaty of Dover still haunted the Dutch. That secret pact, signed in 1670, had promised English support for French ambitions in exchange for gold and a slow march toward Catholicism in England. Now, with James II openly Catholic on the English throne and rumours swirling of renewed Anglo-French cooperation, the spectre of a Catholic superpower at the heart of Europe felt dangerously close. William of Orange saw the map narrowing. Every diplomatic courier brought fresh warnings from the continent. French troops massing near the frontiers, English envoys seen at Versailles, whispers of a joint campaign against the Dutch. The revocation of Nantes had not just driven out Protestant families, it had signalled that Louis XIV would use faith as a weapon, and that no treaty could be trusted. As the League of Augsburg's fragile peace broke down, and the Dutch navy faced mounting pressure, William's sense of urgency deepened. Protestant interests across Europe seemed on the edge of extinction, and the Dutch Republic, for all its wealth, could not stand alone. The threat was not just to borders or trade, but to the very survival of religious and political freedom in the north. In this climate of dread, every move in England took on continental weight. If James II allied with Louis XIV, the Dutch would be encircled, cut off by sea, outnumbered on land, and isolated in faith. The stakes reached beyond England's shores, binding the fate of two nations to the ambitions of a single French king. The stage was set for confrontation, and the Dutch began to prepare for war not as a choice, but as a necessity. On the night of June 30th, 1688, a letter left London under the tightest secrecy. 7 signatures, each belonging to a pillar of the English aristocracy, lined the bottom. Danby, Devonshire, Oxford, Shrewsbury, Lumley, Compton and Russell. Together, they would become known as the Immortal 7. Their message, written in cipher and carried by trusted hands through diplomatic channels, was nothing short of a plea for intervention. The words cut through the page. 19 parts of 20 throughout the kingdom are desirous of a change. The stakes could not have been higher. James II's rule had veered into open Catholic favouritism, inflaming Parliament and alienating old allies. The birth of a male heir in June shattered any hope that the Protestant succession might survive. For the 7, the time for cautious protest was over. They warned William of Orange that if he delayed, it might soon be too late for us to contribute to our own deliverance. The letter promised that the English people would rise if given a signal, that the army, Parliament, and even the City of London would not stand with the king. They asked for arms, for ships, for a prince to lead them. The message was clear. Legitimacy for an invasion would come not from foreign ambition, but from the desperate invitation of England's own elite. The courier, Arthur Herbert, disguised his mission under layers of false papers and diplomatic immunity. He crossed the Channel, evading English spies and French informants, and delivered the letter into William's hands at The Hague. The ciphered script was decoded by Dutch officials, and its urgency was unmistakable. William now had what no foreign invader since the Norman conquest had possessed: a written invitation from England's most powerful men, offering not just a welcome, but a mandate to act. Within days, the Dutch council chambers buzzed with debate. The Seven's letter was read and reread. Its promises and risks weighed against the threat from France and the looming shadow of James's alliance with Louis XIV. The decision that followed would change the fate of two nations. The Dutch Republic, with William at its head, began to move from fear to action. Plans for a fleet, for troops, for the largest amphibious operation Europe had seen or had seen since the Spanish Armada were set in motion. England's crisis had become a European emergency, and the countdown to invasion had begun. Dawn broke over the Dutch coast, with more than 450 ships crowding the harbours, warships, merchantmen, transports and supply vessels, their masts thick as a winter forest. Dutch pilots, veterans of North Sea tempests, studied the sky and tide tables with anxious eyes. The fleet's muster lists, signed off in Amsterdam and Rotterdam, named every vessel and every man aboard, over 40,000 soldiers, sailors and officers, drawn from across Europe. It was an armada unmatched since the days of the Spanish fleet in 1588, its size rivaling even the great invasions of later centuries. William of Orange stood on the deck of the flagship betrayal, surrounded by his commanders, as the first signals flew up the halyards. For weeks, the wind had held stubbornly against them, trapping the fleet in port and threatening the entire enterprise. Then, on the night of September 28th, the wind veered sharply east-northeast. The betrayal's logbook recorded the moment that the wind had turned and the sea was calm enough to lay to. By morning, the order was given. Sails unfurled, anchors rose. The entire fleet slipped out on the ebb tide, catching the fresh wind that would drive them across the North Sea. The crossing was a test of nerve and discipline. Storms battered the convoy, but the Dutch pilots, armed with the latest charts and flag codes, kept the ships in line. The English navy, caught by a rising spring tide and the wrong wind, remained locked in its own harbours, unable to intercept. In the log of betrayal, the pilot's hand recorded that the fleet had made rapid passage and land was sighted at dawn. On November 5th, the Armada appeared off Torbay. Local fishermen and scattered militiamen watched as the Dutch ships dropped anchor in the bay, their decks crowded with soldiers in orange sashes. The first wave, 2,000 elite infantry, hit the beaches in tight formation, securing the shoreline without a shot. Within hours, artillery and cavalry followed, and William himself stepped ashore, raising his standard on English soil. Proclamations flew out to the towns and villages. This was not a raid, not a diplomatic gesture, but a foreign army landing by force. The sheer scale of the operation, more than 400 ships and tens of thousands of men, sent shockwaves through England's ruling class. The invasion was not a rumour or a pamphlet war. It was real, undeniable, and already underway. Power in England began to unravel almost as soon as Dutch boots hit the Devon shore. The army that James II had counted on for defence instead became a source of dread in Whitehall. Rumours raced ahead of William's columns, officers debating in candlelit tents, noblemen weighing their loyalty against the rising tide of foreign troops. The shock came not from cannon fire, but from the quiet shuffling of allegiances in the corridors of power. John Churchill, a trusted commander and future Duke of Marlborough, delivered the blow that shattered the king's hopes. On November 6th, Churchill slipped away from the royal camp and sent a letter straight to William. His words, now preserved in the calendar of state papers, cut through centuries. The king's cause is lost. The people yearn for liberty. I lay aside the service which I have hitherto performed to His Majesty, and offer my sword to the Prince of Orange, whose cause I now embrace wholly. Churchill's decision was more than personal ambition. He controlled a crucial block of troops in the south, men who, with their commander gone, would not fight for James. Defections multiplied overnight. Noble families, bishops, city aldermen, Each move echoed through Parliament and the streets of London. The machinery of government began to grind to a halt. Ministers vanished from their posts, orders went unanswered. The King's council chambers stood empty, as if the heart of government had simply stopped beating. The ultimate symbol of collapse came in the dead of night. As James II prepared his escape, loyalists tried to spirit away the Great Seal of the realm, the physical stamp of royal authority. In the chaos, the seal was thrown into the Thames near the Tower, lost to the current. Parliamentary journals recorded its disappearance on December 19th. Without the seal, no law could be passed, no royal order could be made. The monarchy itself seemed to dissolve into the river. The vacuum was total. With Churchill's betrayal and the seal gone, James fled the capital. No great battle decided the outcome. The Dutch invasion succeeded because the kingdom's foundation crumbled from within, leaving William to claim not just a crown, but the empty shell of a government that had lost the will to rule. History still calls it a revolution, not an invasion. Yet the reality, 40,000 foreign troops and 400 warships, remains undeniable. Power can shift overnight when fear and ambition collide. The shockwaves of 1688 echo in every debate on sovereignty and intervention. Sometimes the greatest upheavals arrive unrecognized.